Elena Marković never believed in the old village legends until the night she and her friend, Luka Novak, arrived in Velika Rika. The fog rolled over the cobblestone streets like a living thing, and every shadow seemed to move on its own. By midnight, Elena would realize that the stories were true, that the dancing lady was real, and that once she spotted you, there was no escaping her rhythm. I had never been to Serbia before, but something about the old stories my grandmother told pulled me toward Velika Rika, a tiny, forgotten village tucked between misty hills. She spoke of a woman who danced at night, whose beauty and horror were inseparable, but I had always dismissed it as folklore. Yet, as the bus wound through narrow, foggy roads, I felt a strange unease, as though the village had been waiting for me. The air smelt damp, earthy, and faintly metallic, like iron and rainwater. The streets were silent, too silent, except for the soft crunch of my boots on the frost-covered cobblestones. My rented room was in an old house at the edge of the village. The wooden beams groaned under the weight of decades, and the windows were so thin I could hear every creak of the wind. That first night, I couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled across the room, casting long shadows that seemed to twitch in time with the wind. Then I heard a faint tapping outside my window. At first I told myself it was the old boards shifting, the wind playing tricks, but the pattern was too deliberate. Tap, 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 spin, spin. My heart started to pound. I rose cautiously, pressing my face against the glass. The street was empty, swallowed by fog, yet at the edge of my vision a shadow flickered. It moved gracefully, spinning as if carried by music I could not hear. My breath caught in my throat. I strained to see, but the fog swallowed it. I felt a pull, a strange curiosity mixed with fear. Then, just as suddenly, the figure vanished. I tried to convince myself it had been my imagination, a trick of the moonlight or my exhaustion. But when I looked down, a single footprint in frost marked the windowsill. It was delicate, perfectly human, yet far too small to belong to an adult. It led toward my bed, fading as if it had never existed. I could not sleep, my mind replaying the image over and over. Each creak of the house, each whistle of wind became her dance, a haunting rhythm that echoed inside my skull. I tried to focus on other thoughts, my plans for the next day, the beauty of the hills, but they dissolved under the weight of anticipation. I felt watched, though my room was empty. The darkness seemed alive, waiting. By the second night, the tapping returned, louder, closer. I could feel the vibrations through the floorboards. My heart raced as I tiptoed to the window. There she was, a pale figure in a long flowing dress, moving slowly along the street. Her movements were elegant, hypnotic, yet something was off. Her head tilted unnaturally, and I thought I glimpsed something in her face, but the fog blurred the details. She spun once, and the motion seemed endless, like she was dancing to music only she could hear. Then she disappeared, leaving a chill in the air that settled deep into my bones. I tried leaving the room, stepping into the hallway of the old house, but the air was thick with the scent of decay, and the shadows seemed to stretch toward me. Every step I took echoed unnaturally, as if the building itself was amplifying my fear. I forced myself to calm down, telling myself it was just an old house, just wind, just fog. Yet, deep inside, a gnawing certainty told me otherwise. Then, the impossible happened. From the corner of my eye, I saw her again, closer this time, in the hallway. The dress shimmered, catching the weak moonlight. I froze, paralyzed, unable to look away. Her face remained obscured, but the air around her thrummed with something alive, malevolent. I blinked, and she vanished, leaving behind the faintest mark of her presence. A handprint on the dust-coated floor, small, delicate, impossibly human. I retreated to my room and locked the door, heart hammering, hands trembling. Yet, even as I lay in bed, I could feel her waiting, spinning somewhere just beyond the walls. The wind outside carried a faint rhythm, soft taps that mirrored her dance, drawing me into a nightmare I had not yet lived. I realized then that the village was not simply silent, it was listening, and now, so was she. The next few days passed in a haze of fear and unease. Sleep became impossible. Every shadow seemed to twitch, every gust of wind carried a rhythm I could not place. Even the villagers acted strangely. They avoided me, their eyes darting away whenever I tried to ask about the dancing lady. When I pressed further, they would murmur something under their breath and hurry inside, slamming doors behind them. I realized quickly that whatever haunted this village was not just a story, it was something they feared deeply, something they had learned to avoid. One evening I felt a pull stronger than curiosity, a compulsion I could not resist. I wandered toward the old chapel at the far edge of the village, the one that had been abandoned for decades. Its walls were cracked, the roof sagging in places, and the door hung loosely on rusted hinges. The air smelled heavy with mold and old wood, but beneath that there was another sense, something metallic, faint but unmistakable, like blood. My steps echoed as I entered, the sound swallowed by the vast empty space. The floorboards groaned beneath me, each one threatening to give way. I stopped in the center, feeling the weight of unseen eyes pressing down. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, I heard music, low, haunting, and distant, but it was undeniably there. A melody that belonged to no living instrument, drifting and twisting through the air. My stomach tightened. I told myself it was the wind, or perhaps a memory of a song I'd once heard. Yet the rhythm grew clearer, insistent, and I realized it was coming from inside the chapel itself. I froze, my breath shallow, as a figure appeared at the altar, pale, impossibly thin, swaying to the invisible music. Her dress was tattered, flowing like smoke, and as she moved I could see that she was not merely dancing, she was commanding the very air around her. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. I wanted to run, yet my legs remained frozen. There was something in the way she moved, a terrible grace that demanded attention. She turned slowly toward me, and for a fraction of a second, I saw her face, hollow sockets where eyes should have been, and a mouth that curved into a smile too wide, too unnatural. I wanted to look away, to shut my eyes, but a part of me was drawn in, mesmerized by the impossible elegance of her dance. Then she spun, and the room seemed to stretch, the walls bending as if the building itself obeyed her rhythm. I stumbled backward, breaking free of the spell long enough to try to escape, but the door I had entered through was gone, replaced by a wall of fog. Panic surged and I turned to find another exit. But the figure was closer now, moving without making a sound, her every step perfectly synchronized with the music that now filled the entire chapel. I felt a cold hand brush my arm, though when I looked, no one was there. The air itself seemed to clutch at me, guiding me toward her. Then I noticed the floor, hundreds of tiny footprints, swirling in impossible patterns, crisscrossing and overlapping, as if countless people had danced there before me. The prints glowed faintly in the dim light, and I realized with growing terror that they were not fading, they were multiplying. The room seemed alive, a stage for something ancient, something hungry. I turned back to the figure, and she reached toward me with both hands, the music swelling in intensity. My own limbs felt heavy, as if drawn into her rhythm against my will. I bolted, diving toward a small side window, shattering the glass with my shoulder. Cold night air hit me, but the music followed, haunting, relentless. I ran blindly through the fog-covered streets, not daring to look behind me. When I finally reached my room, I slammed the door, panting, shaking, drenched in sweat, yet even there I could hear the tapping, the same delicate, precise rhythm that had begun the nightmare. On the floor, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Scratched into the wooden floorboards were words, jagged and uneven, as if carved by someone or something desperate to be understood. Dance with me, or stay forever. I stared at them, numb, unable to comprehend fully what they meant. My grandmother's stories, the village's fear, the endless spinning figurette, all collided in my mind. The dancing lady was not just a ghost or a tale, she was a predator, and I had walked straight into her web. I could no longer tell where the village ended and the nightmare began. Every shadow, every rustle, every whisper of wind carried the echo of her dance, and I knew that the next time I closed my eyes, I might not wake alone. The village felt alive in a way that terrified me. Every time I stepped outside, shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should, twisting across the walls and cobblestones. Even the fog seemed deliberate, moving with intent, hiding and revealing, as if it were guiding me. My attempts to leave Velika Rika became futile. I followed the same road out, and each time I found myself inexplicably back at the chapel, as if the streets themselves had shifted overnight, mocking my attempts at escape. The thought gnawed at me. This place did not want visitors, it wanted something from me. The nights grew worse, the tapping on the floorboards, the rustle of her dress, the faint, impossible rhythm of her dance followed me into my dreams and back into waking. I could hear her everywhere, a soft, deliberate tapping that mirrored the beat of my own heartbeat. At times it seemed to come from within the walls themselves, as if the house had become her stage, and I the unwilling audience. I started seeing her figure in reflections, in windows that should have been empty. Her form spinning endlessly, always just at the edge of my vision. One night, the compulsion to see her again overpowered my fear. I found myself walking toward the chapel, each step drawn by something I could neither resist nor understand. The door hung loosely on its hinges, creaking as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with the scent of decay and something metallic. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, and there she was, closer than ever. Her dress flowed and twisted around her like smoke caught in a current. Her movements were no longer graceful, they were jerking, frantic, violent, yet mesmerizing, hypnotic in their repetition. I could not look away. Her hollow sockets seemed to pierce my mind, reaching inside me, pulling at my thoughts. A cold dread wrapped itself around my chest, squeezing, yet my body moved as if in response to an unseen command. My legs obeyed the rhythm I could hear in my head, moving slightly, almost imperceptibly, until I realized I was stepping closer to her without choosing to. My own hands twitched, as if dancing to music I could not hear. Fear and fascination warred inside me, leaving me paralyzed, unable to decide whether to run or surrender. The floor beneath her was covered in more of the tiny footprints I had seen before. Hundreds of them, swirling in impossible patterns that overlapped and crossed in ways that made no sense. They glowed faintly in the dim light, delicate yet unmistakably human. My stomach churned as I realized these were not mere marks, they were evidence of those who had come before, those who had danced for her, been taken by her, lost to this village in silence. My heart thudded violently, echoing the rhythm of her dance, and I felt my mind slip, the edges of my thoughts fraying under the pressure of her presence. She reached toward me with both hands. I could feel the air itself pressing, guiding me, pulling me closer. Panic surged, but my body resisted my will. I stumbled backward, desperate, only to find that the doors had vanished. The chapel had transformed, walls stretching, shadows lengthening, the music swelling to a deafening, internal roar. I was trapped in a space that should have been finite, but now seemed infinite. A labyrinth built of darkness, music, and her relentless dance. I tried to shout, but no sound emerged. My breaths came in ragged gasps, yet the rhythm persisted, pulsing through the floorboards, through the air, through my veins. My vision blurred as her form spun faster, faster, until the edges of reality seemed to melt, and I feared I would join the endless spinning, consumed by the same dance that had claimed countless others. The footprints shifted beneath her, growing, multiplying, a tidal wave of delicate human forms moving in impossible circles. Then, as suddenly as it began, she vanished. The chapel was empty, silent, except for the faint scent of old flowers and something coppery, like blood. The footprints were gone, leaving only dust and the faint outline of where she had danced. I stumbled out into the foggy streets, trembling, my chest heaving, trying to convince myself it had been a hallucination. Yet the rhythm followed me, soft and insistent, hidden just beyond hearing, teasing me with the knowledge that she was never far away, never truly gone. Back in my room, I could not escape the certainty that she had entered with me. The shadows in the corners seemed to move with intention, and the air carried that same faint tapping, as if her dance had claimed this place as well. I realized then that Velika Rika was alive, not with people, but with her presence. And I was already trapped in her world, caught between fear and fascination, unable to stop the dance that was slowly consuming me. Sleep had become a distant memory. Every night, I lay awake, eyes wide, listening to the faint taps of her shoes on the floor, imagining her spinning just outside my window or hiding in the shadows of my room. Even during the day, the village seemed hostile, almost sentient, watching my every move. Windows followed me, doors whispered, and the fog clung to the streets like a living thing. The villagers avoided me entirely, crossing the street or disappearing into their homes when I approached. Even the children stopped playing near me, their small faces pale, eyes wide with unspoken fear. I no longer tried to leave. Every road seemed to twist back to the chapel or some other part of the village I had never noticed before. Time itself felt distorted, the days bleeding together. The tapping and the music followed me, sometimes so faint I could almost convince myself it wasn't there, then so loud it shook the walls, echoing inside my skull. I began seeing her in unexpected places, reflections in puddles, glass windows, even in the polished surface of a metal spoon left on my kitchen counter. Always spinning, always watching, her hollow sockets boring into me, holding me prisoner with invisible chains. One night, drawn by a force I could neither fight nor resist, I wandered toward the river that ran past the edge of the village. Fog lay thick across the water, swallowing the banks, and the air was heavy, filled with the faint metallic scent I had learned to associate with her. And then I saw her. She was dancing on the surface of the river itself, gliding as if the water was solid. Her dress flowed around her, dark as smoke, catching the pale light of the moon. The rhythm of her movement matched the tapping I had heard for nights, an impossible, hypnotic melody that pulled at something deep inside me. I wanted to turn away. I wanted to run, to tear myself from the grip of this nightmare, but I couldn't. My feet moved forward on their own, carrying me closer to the river's edge. The fog swirled around her, and I realized that I wasn't alone. Shapes moved beneath the surface of the water. Shadowy forms reaching upward, their hands pale, elongated, grasping toward her and me. The music rose in my head, a deafening rhythm that seemed to command my heartbeat, my breathing, my very thoughts. I stumbled backward, desperate, but the fog shifted, wrapping around me like a living thing. Every attempt to escape was thwarted by the air itself, guiding me toward the river, toward her. She turned her head, tilting it in that same impossible way, and I felt her hollow gaze pierce my mind. For the first time I understood that she did not merely haunt this village, she controlled it. Every shadow, every street, every ripple in the water was part of her domain, and now I was part of it too. The water surged violently, and dozens of pale hands erupted, grasping, clutching, pulling. I screamed silently, my voice swallowed by the fog. The rhythm of her dance accelerated, and I felt my own movements beginning to sync unwillingly with hers. Panic and fascination warred inside me, leaving me disoriented, unable to resist or flee. I caught sight of the riverbank behind me, saw it stretch impossibly far, and realized I had no way out. The village itself had become a trap, a stage, and I was the performer in a ritual I could not understand. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the hands vanished, the fog lifted slightly, and she was gone. The river lay calm, deceptively normal, as if nothing had occurred. My legs trembled, my chest heaving, but the tapping, the faint, insistent rhythm remained. I staggered back to my room, feeling the weight of her presence follow me, pressing down, a constant reminder that I could not escape. The windows that had once reflected normal street scenes now showed shadows moving in impossible patterns, twisting, spinning, dancing without end. I realized then that I was changing. My reflection in the glass was no longer entirely mine. My eyes appeared hollow, my movements twitchy, my hands trembling as if rehearsing a rhythm only I could hear. Every shadow, every whisper of wind, every faint sound in the house seemed to pull me closer to her, urging me to join the dance I feared more than death itself. I understood finally that Velika Rika was not just a village, it was a trap, a living stage, and I had already been caught in her performance. And somewhere, in the fog and the shadows, I could feel her presence, waiting, spinning, relentless. The next time she appeared, I knew I might not be able to resist. The morning after that night at the river, I decided I had to leave Velika Rika no matter what. My mind was frayed, my body trembling, and every instinct screamed that I was no longer safe in this village. I packed my bag in a mechanical haze, throwing clothes, papers, and essentials into it without care, my eyes darting constantly to the corners of the room, where shadows seemed to pulse with life. Even the familiar creaks of the old house sounded like the footsteps of someone or something following me. The village was shrouded in fog as I stepped outside, the mist wrapping around me like a shroud. The streets, once empty, now seemed to stretch unnaturally, bending and twisting in ways that made it impossible to tell one lane from another. Every street sign was faded or broken, and I realized that I could no longer rely on my memory to guide me. The village had become a labyrinth, each turn leading me deeper into its heart rather than away from it, and I knew, with a sinking certainty, that she was watching, waiting, drawing me further in with invisible threads. I finally reached my car, parked at the edge of the village where the road met the hills. Relief flooded me for a fleeting moment, but it was quickly replaced by dread when I saw the fog curling around the tires, thick and heavy, refusing to let me leave. I opened the door and slid in, locking it behind me, my hands shaking on the wheel. The engine roared to life, but the moment I tried to drive, it died, sputtering and refusing to start. My panic surged. I slammed my hands against the dashboard, my heart pounding, my breath coming in ragged gasps. Then I felt it. Before I saw it, the unmistakable presence, chilling and deliberate, pressing down in the back seat. My stomach twisted, a cold fear spreading from my chest to my fingers. I dared not turn immediately, fearing what I might see, but the weight of it, the oppressive sense of her watching, made it impossible to resist. Slowly I turned my head, and there she was, closer than I had ever imagined. Her face inches from the glass, hollow sockets boring into mine, the tattered folds of her dress pressed against the seat. Her hands tapped rhythmically on the roof, following the same terrifying beat that had haunted me for nights. My body froze, my voice vanished. She did not move like a normal person. She was fluid, unnatural, yet her presence was undeniably solid, impossibly close, impossibly real. And then I realized the truth that had been whispering to me all along. I had never left her domain. Velika Rika was not just a village. It was her stage, her world, and now I was the performer she had chosen. I felt the rhythm in my veins, a pulse that was not my own, guiding my heartbeat, tugging at my movements. The terror and fascination that had haunted me now merged, leaving me unable to resist the inevitable. I do not know how long I sat there, staring at her as the tapping continued, my mind slipping closer to a fragile edge. Part of me thought I would wake from this nightmare, find myself alone in my car with the engine working, the sun rising normally, but deep down, I knew it would never be that simple. The village had claimed me, the chapel, the river, and now her presence in the car made it undeniable. I was already lost. Weeks later, when my car was finally found on the outskirts of the village, authorities found no trace of me inside. No body, no belongings, nothing except a single small footprint pressed into the passenger seat. It was delicate, impossibly human, yet faintly twisted, as if something inhuman had danced within it. The villagers spoke nothing of what happened, their eyes avoiding the scene, and the road to Velika Rika remained shrouded in the same thick, unnatural fog. I do not know if I am dead or if I am trapped somewhere between this world and hers, dancing to a rhythm I cannot resist. Sometimes, when I close my eyes in moments of rare privacy, I can feel her hands, cold and skeletal, guiding mine, pulling me into the music that will never end. And somewhere in the distance, I hear the faintest tapping, like shoes on cobblestones, spinning in circles I can no longer escape. No one knows where she comes from or why she dances. Some say she is the soul of the village itself, an ancient spirit that claims those who wander too close. Others whisper that the music she commands is the sound of lives already lost, looping endlessly through the fog. I cannot tell what is real anymore, only that she waits, always waiting, for the next footsteps she can claim, and the next dance that will never end.